Frustration and anger this morning from the victims of convicted traffickers Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell.
Linking Jeffrey Epstein to Ellen DeGeneres and baby eating and cannibalism.
Epstein files reveal Ellen DeGeneres as, and I'm quoting this directly from the Post's, Hollywood's most prolific cannibal, that she consumed human flesh. People are sharing distorted images of her face, writing paragraphs about underground dystopias, calling her a vampire.
If I do, I don't want it to go to waste. Who will eat pizza if I... Jennifer? Yes? Harrison? Yes? Come on. All right. Too large? What do you think? I'm going to order some...
Ghislaine Maxwell sat before a camera inside a Texas prison, facing a panel of members of the United States Congress. When questioned, she repeated the same response again and again: I invoke my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. More than a dozen times, the answer never changed. In just under a minute, the woman who arguably knows more about what happened inside Jeffrey Epstein's world than almost anyone still alive offered nothing but silence, yet everyone involved already knew it would unfold this way. The committee knew. Her lawyers had made it clear beforehand. The public watched a hearing that was never expected to produce new revelations. So why did the moment still feel important? Because the significance wasn't in what Maxwell said. It was in everything surrounding her silence: freshly released documents, high-profile names suddenly appearing in government records, growing public anger over who may have been protected, who escaped scrutiny, and why. Those unanswered questions have fueled years of speculation and frustration. Maxwell's testimony did little to resolve them, but it brought them back into sharp focus, and that's what this story is really about.
Frustration and anger this morning from the victims of convicted traffickers Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell.
For a full month, the Trump administration has tried to extinguish the fiery controversy over the case of Jeffrey Epstein and whether some of Epstein's crimes and cohorts are being covered up by the government. In a controversial move Friday, the administration added more fuel to the fire.
On the issue of trafficker, you think that's traumatizing to victims?
I think what makes it traumatizing to victims when we hear about pardons and all this work of trafficking is that, again, the rich and powerful are getting a pass, and what about me? And I think as we look at what are the solutions that need to be out there, rather than spending all this energy on the Epstein case, and let's focus our energy locally on rooting out trafficking in our own communities.
We asked Maxwell's defense attorney if a pardon is being discussed or negotiated, and he has not responded. Maxwell has 12 more years to serve in prison for her trafficking conviction.
In February 2026, Ghislaine Maxwell appeared virtually before the House Oversight Committee. Dressed in a beige prison uniform, she sat at a table inside a federal correctional facility in Texas, her gaze mostly fixed downward. The committee had spent months working to secure her testimony. After initially refusing to comply with a subpoena issued in July 2025, Maxwell became the subject of a lengthy legal battle before finally agreeing to appear. When the long-awaited moment arrived, however, it yielded no new answers. Maxwell appeared on screen, took her seat, and then declined to provide substantive testimony, repeatedly invoking her constitutional right against self-incrimination. After months of anticipation and legal wrangling, the hearing produced little more than silence.
A whistleblower is telling the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee that Jeffrey Epstein accomplice Ghislaine Maxwell is getting special treatment in prison.
Well, the whistleblower made clear that Ghislaine Maxwell is just in a completely different category than every other prisoner. She gets essentially room service behind bars. She can use the shower, she can use the gym whenever she wants to. She gets special treatment there, and unlike other prisoners who have to communicate with people outside of the prison through the unreliable and very slow mail system, she's actually getting messages sent through the warden to the people that she wants to communicate with, and the warden is actually offering her the opportunity to communicate on legal matters with people outside of the prison through the warden. So it's a pretty extraordinary situation. Of course, her presence in that camp facility itself is completely astonishing, given that they had never had a offender before, and offenders were not allowed in that camp, but she was allowed in, and she got in pretty much on an overnight basis after she met with Todd Blanche. She was subpoenaed by the Oversight Committee on July 23rd after a vote on July 22nd, and it was on July 24th that Todd Blanche, who had been Donald Trump's personal criminal defense lawyer, now working for the DOJ as the number 2 person, went over to meet her, not in order to find out what she knew in terms of getting other people to be investigated who were involved in the $1.5 billion international child ring, but rather to find out what she would say about Donald Trump. And he pronounced himself satisfied when, she said that she had never seen Donald Trump in any compromising position with young women or girls. In fact, she'd never seen Epstein in some compromising position with underage women or girls. So anyway, he liked what he heard, and then suddenly she got this transfer.
Yeah, and we've asked the White House about that and Todd Blanche himself. But can I ask you on the whistleblower, did you speak to this person directly?
Well, I don't want to get into any more depth on it, but I would say this is a person who is in a position to know everything that was reported to us.
And do you think there's more
Absolutely
to come out about how she's being treated or the treatment she's getting, I should say?
I do. Well, one of the other things that came up was that Ghislaine Maxwell is actively seeking a commutation, a pardon from the president right now. And I learned from somebody else, a Republican, that there's a lot of chatter that, he just pardoned 77 people who participated in different ways in his attempt to lie about the 2020 presidential election, his attempt to overthrow the election. And all of that, some people are seeing as a smokescreen to get people talking about that, because none of these people are facing federal prosecution. They've already been disbarred or faced other kinds of charges. But all of that is really meant to distract people from what may be a pardon forthcoming for Ghislaine Maxwell.
With us now is Jennifer Freeman. She's an attorney who represents some of the survivors of Epstein and Maxwell. First of all,
her attorney, David Marcus, did have a message for the committee. According to Marcus, Maxwell would be willing to answer every question if she were granted clemency by the administration. In exchange for that consideration, he suggested she would provide testimony and maintain that certain individuals accused of wrongdoing were, in fact, innocent. That proposal immediately drew scrutiny from both sides of the aisle. After all, it raises a difficult question. What does it mean when the promise of testimony is offered as leverage for personal freedom? To many observers, it was a striking position. Not necessarily the posture of someone eager to speak freely, but of someone who understands the value of what they know, and the power of withholding it. Committee Chairman James Comer described the situation as very disturbing. Ranking Member Robert Garcia was even more direct. After months of resisting a congressional subpoena, he argued, Maxwell had finally appeared only to provide no meaningful answers, offering nothing to survivors, nothing to the public, and no clarity about who else may have been involved in Epstein's operation. The deposition was brief. It resolved none of the questions that had brought the committee there in the first place, and yet, despite producing almost no new information, it seemed to shift the entire conversation. The focus was no longer on what Maxwell had said, but on what she continued to refuse to say, and why.
Ghislaine Maxwell, we know from the Epstein files, didn't tell the truth. She got moved to an open prison. Now she's asking for clemency to speak at all. Was it a mistake to move her to that prison? Should she be moved back?
I don't know the rationale for moving her from one prison to the other, but look, initially she had asked that the Oversight Committee grant immunity, and when we met with the survivors of Epstein, it was pretty clear, according to the survivors, and we had 20 some members in that meeting, that Maxwell was a very bad person, and she committed a lot of crimes. And it was the intent, in my opinion, when we left that meeting in a bipartisan manner, that we would not grant immunity. Now, what she said today, she's asked for clemency from the president. So I personally, for the reasons you just stated, don't think she should be granted any type of immunity or clemency. But we'll obviously, as more documents are read and understood, then we'll go from there.
While much of the public's attention was fixed on the spectacle surrounding Maxwell's deposition, a far more consequential story was unfolding behind the scenes. In the documents.in November 2025, Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which was subsequently signed into law. The legislation required the Department of Justice to release nearly all remaining Epstein-related records by December 19. That deadline came and went without full compliance. When the Justice Department finally released its first batch of documents, many of the pages were heavily redacted. The response was immediate and bipartisan. Lawmakers from both parties expressed frustration, arguing that the public had been promised transparency but received only fragments of information. Survivors voiced similar anger. For years, they had waited for greater accountability and disclosure. Instead, what arrived were pages marked by blacked-out sections and unanswered questions. The controversy quickly shifted from what had been released to what was still being withheld, and why.
Good evening, I'm John Yang. Overnight, the Justice Department released hundreds more heavily redacted pages of material it had gathered on convicted offender Jeffrey Epstein. Still, what's been made public so far falls well short of the full disclosure required by the law Congress passed last month. These new releases come in addition to the thousands of pages of photos, correspondence, and other material released on Friday afternoon. And the Justice Department says there will be much more to come in the coming weeks. Among the latest batch, released around midnight, is a phone message slip that reads, "She has females for Mr. J.E." Jeff Mason is a White House correspondent for Reuters. Jeff, these new files, the files even though were released yesterday, tell us a lot about, more detail about Jeffrey Epstein. But does it tell us anything about his relationship with Donald Trump, with President Trump?
Very little, and that's one thing that people were maybe anticipating getting more information on, but the files have some mentions of Trump and some conversations, but no photos. One of the pieces of evidence that people were expecting was not in the release, and in general, the files were focused on other people in Jeffrey Epstein's orbit and not the current president of the United States.
Even with that, this is now going to be spread out over several weeks. It's not going to be a one-day story, one-day headline. Does the White House have a strategy to deal with that?
Well, their strategy so far has been largely to say, A, that they are being very transparent by doing these document release and following the law. A statement from a White House spokeswoman yesterday pretty much said just that and accused Democrats of not answering questions about their connections with Jeffrey Epstein. I think broadly, the White House would be happy for this whole issue to go away, and that is evidenced by the fact that President Trump spent months trying to prevent these documents from coming out. That led to a lot of discord within his MAGA base and led to some divisions within Congress amongst Republicans. In the end, they ended up passing this law and the president signed it. But some Democrats and, in fact, at least one Republican are saying that the administration did not follow the law with its limited release on Friday.
Well, one of those Republicans is the co-sponsor, Representative Thomas Massie of Kentucky. He tweeted today that the release grossly fails to comply with the law. What can they do? Can they go to court and sue over this?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if that's something that they're thinking of doing. Certainly, I do know, because this is what the Justice Department has said, is that they're planning to release more, but they are saying that there are so many things that have to go through that they just couldn't basically do it all in one batch, but that there will be multiple additional batches coming. But as you say, even the co-sponsor of the bill on the Republican side, Congressman Massey, is upset about that.
Then, on January 30th, 2026, the story took another dramatic turn. More than 3 million additional documents were released. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced that the government had now made public all remaining Epstein-related records covered by the disclosure process. Alongside the release, the Department of Justice sent a 6-page letter to Congress identifying hundreds of prominent individuals whose names appeared throughout the files, but the letter emphasized a critical point. The appearance of a person's name in the documents does not, by itself, imply wrongdoing. that disclaimer quickly became one of the most important, and most overlooked, aspects of the entire saga. The names contained within the records span an extraordinary range of public figures, including political leaders, entertainers, scientists, business executives, and other influential individuals. The challenge facing investigators, journalists, and the public is determining the context in which each name appears. A listing in an address book is not the same as participation in an email exchange arranging travel. A photograph taken at a public event is not equivalent to one captured in a private setting. Context matters, and in many cases, the documents alone do not immediately provide clear answers. With millions of pages now available, researchers are still working through the material, piecing together relationships, timelines, and events. That ongoing process is one reason so many people remain dissatisfied. Despite the unprecedented volume of information released, many feel that the complete picture remains elusive. The documents answered some questions, but they also generated countless new ones.
The transcript of the congressional testimony of the former Attorney General, Pam Bondi, was just released. Now, there's a lot there, but let me focus on something that I think is key and important. The reports are that the Department of Justice is sitting on 3 million documents related to the Jeffrey Epstein case. 3 million. Now, Pam Bondi was asked about that, and she said that she was told, her understanding was that those documents have not been turned over for 3 reasons: non-responsive, privileged, or duplicative. Remember, those are the 3: non-responsive, privileged, or duplicative. Those categories make no sense. Let's take it from the back to the front. Duplicative. Well, who cares? Turn them over. We'll see if they're really duplicative. We'll be able to see it. Big deal. If you're like, so what? We get 2 copies or 3 copies when there was 1. Second category, privileged. The Epstein Transparency Act, as members of Congress have said, does not allow for claims of privilege. Period. The end. So the department can say, oh, we want to withhold this based on some undisclosed claim of privilege, like attorney-client privilege or some such privilege. None of that is allowed under a congressional statute. The end. So they cannot claim that that's why they're withholding something and also be within the law. Final category, non-responsive. That's a fancy way of saying unrelated. That makes no logical sense. To say that there are documents that have nothing to do with the Jeffrey Epstein case is an irrelevancy. So everything related to the Jeffrey Epstein case needs to be turned over, and none of the 3 categories make any sense. It makes it clear that the Department of Justice is not in compliance with the Epstein Transparency Act. This is food for thought when Todd Blanche comes up for his confirmation hearing to be the Attorney General of the United States. Pam Bondi also made it clear that Todd Blanche had a key role in all of these decisions. So what that means is, for Todd Blanche's confirmation hearing that's going to be upcoming, keep your eye on the ball because this is going to be a key area for questioning.
The released files contain references to a vast number of well-known public figures, politicians, entertainers, business leaders, and other prominent individuals appear throughout photographs, contact books, flight records, correspondence, and various supporting documents. Names such as Mick Jagger, Woody Allen, Prince Andrew, Kevin Spacey, Chris Tucker, Diana Ross, and many others appear somewhere within the millions of pages that have now been made public. A 6-page Department of Justice letter sent to Congress identified hundreds of notable individuals whose names appeared in the records. But investigators and legal experts have repeatedly emphasized a crucial point: the presence of a person's name in the files is not, by itself, evidence of wrongdoing. Context matters. A useful example came from Whoopi Goldberg, who publicly acknowledged that her name appeared in the documents. She explained that the reference involved an inquiry about whether Epstein's private aircraft could be used for transportation related to a charitable event. According to her account, she never met Epstein personally. That illustrates why simply finding a name in the records tells only part of the story. There is a significant difference between appearing in a contact list, being mentioned in correspondence, attending a public event where photographs were taken, or having documented travel and repeated interactions. Each reference must be evaluated within its specific context before any meaningful conclusions can be drawn. As investigators, journalists, and researchers continue reviewing the millions of released documents, distinguishing between incidental connections and more substantial associations remains one of the central challenges.
Joining me now is writer and comic Michael Loftus. Michael, let's start with Whoopi Goldberg. She's denied having any involvement with Jeffrey Epstein after her name appeared in the files. Here she is on The View with her side of the story.
In the name of transparency, can you put up my name is in the file? Whoopi needs a plane to get to Monaco. John Lennon's charity, it should say Julian Lennon's charity, is paying for trying to turn me into, I wasn't his girlfriend. I wasn't his friend.
You were too old for him.
I was not only too old, but it was at a time, where this is just not, you used to have facts before you said stuff.
But Trump. Michael, what's your reaction to that? Interesting that to support a charity, she needs a private jet to Monaco. I mean, I would have thought you'd jump on a plane, pay for your own airfares, but put that to one side. What's your reaction to that?
I feel bad for Whoopi Goldberg. This is so cringy. She could have like bought a ticket. She could have hired a jet. Their service. She wanted to be close with Jeffrey Epstein. She wanted in. This was her excuse to ask him for a favor. And she doesn't say his response. He just wrote back 2 words. No thanks. So Jeffrey Epstein, who's world famous for like, he likes women, he likes the ladies, he likes to party, and Whoopi Goldberg is like, hey, wanna hang out? And he's like, no thanks. Oh, Jeffrey Epstein turned her down. She's gonna be going to therapy for years to get over that.
Yeah, the private jet thing, it's not a good look. But it's got to be said, there are a lot of names in the files that aren't guilty, but there are also names who deserve far more scrutiny. In the US at the moment, you've got saturation coverage of this Nancy Guthrie story, the suspected kidnapping of a TV host Savannah Guthrie's mother. It is a terrible case, but the coverage, Michael, has just been completely out of whack when you consider the coverage of the Epstein files.
Yeah, this is like watching like a Penn and Teller routine. Like every magician does that misdirection thing. Hey, don't look over here, look at this. And there's so much misdirection going on. There's going to be a beauty pageant at some point, and someone's going to get the Savannah Guthrie Glove Award. I can tell you everything about this woman. It's wall-to-wall coverage. You got like 9 billion terabytes of emails, videos, photographs, lists of everything with Epstein. But they're like, ooh, what do you think Savannah Guthrie, what do you think she got when she went out to lunch 2 years ago? I don't care. Somebody tell me about Epstein. Tell me about people getting arrested, for the love of God.
One of the biggest challenges surrounding this story is that nuance rarely survives online. In the fast-moving world of social media, a name appearing in a document can quickly be transformed into a presumption of guilt. Within hours, speculation often spreads faster than verified information, and complex facts are reduced to simple narratives. That environment has helped fuel some of the more sensational claims surrounding the Epstein case, claims that fact-checkers and investigators have repeatedly challenged or debunked. Yet those stories frequently attract millions of views. While the documented reality receives far less attention, the truth is often complicated. The misinformation is usually simple. And that gap has had a significant impact on public understanding of the case. At the same time, there is another aspect of the story worth examining: the way Ghislaine Maxwell has approached every major opportunity to speak publicly about what she knows. Her appearance before Congress was not the first time she faced difficult questions and declined to provide substantive answers. Instead, it was perhaps the most visible example of a strategy that has largely defined her legal approach since her conviction. There was one notable exception. Last summer, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche traveled to Florida to meet with Maxwell directly. During that interview, she agreed to cooperate, and transcripts later released to the public reportedly exceeded 300 pages. The circumstances, however, were very different. Maxwell had been granted limited immunity for that session, providing legal protections that were absent during her congressional appearance. So when she later appeared before Congress, with cameras rolling, public attention focused on every word, and no immunity agreement in place, her response was markedly different. Question after question, she relied on the same answer. An invocation of her Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. The contrast highlighted a pattern that has become central to understanding Maxwell's public posture, a willingness to speak under specific legal protections, and an equally firm determination to remain silent when those protections are absent.
Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche is not living his best life right now. He may think he is, right? He may think he's on course to become the next Attorney General of the United States, even though he doesn't have the support right now to secure that nomination. But everything else in his life that he thinks is actually going swimmingly is in fact imploding. And Democratic Representative Ted Lieu, this past weekend, decided to remind Todd Blanche that even if you do become Attorney General, you're not going to be Attorney General in perpetuity. Okay, you don't get to hold that post for the rest of your life. In fact, at best, you'll have like 2.5 years, and then you're basically effed. Here is what Ted Lieu told Todd Blanche via social media this past weekend. Dear Todd Blanche, you don't get to decide to move on from the Epstein files or from following the congressional law. That decision can only be made by the American people in Congress. You will be disbarred. The files will eventually be released. And then he added, November is coming. What sparked Representative Ted Lieu to make these comments is that Todd Blanche came out this weekend and announced, we still have 2.5 million Epstein files that haven't been released, and I'm not gonna do it. Even though, as Ted Lieu correctly pointed out, the law says I have to, I'm just not, says the acting Attorney General, because he says, as Lieu pointed out as well, it's time to move on. Right? I mean, yeah, who cares about this stuff? Which, of course, is illegal. And that means Todd Blanche is already breaking the law, and he doesn't even have the real job yet. And if he is breaking the law, announcing he's just straight up going to break the law too, so it's premeditated, right? The Democrats can easily impeach him for that. Like, that's literally a crime, black and white, no gray area anywhere. So yes, he can be impeached. Can he be removed in the Senate? That'll remain to be seen. But he will be disbarred upon leaving office, not just because of violating the law, but also because of the illegal settlement that he arranged between Donald Trump and the IRS, which of course Donald Trump also controls. You have a group of several dozen retired federal judges that challenged that settlement in court, arguing that it was completely, wholly, totally, from start to finish, illegal. And if the courts do agree with those retired federal judges, who I imagine are probably not wrong in their analysis, then that's also another violation of the law that he can be disbarred for. So even if Todd Blanche becomes the next Attorney General, and I do actually think he will, he's only going to be living the high life for maximum of 2.5 years. More than likely, he'll end up being fired by Donald Trump because he won't be able to deliver on the things that he promised Trump he would, like prosecuting his political enemies. That's going to fall apart rather hilariously in court. But after that, the real world is going to smack you in the face. The Bar Association is going to smack you in the face. The court system is going to smack you in the face. And even if Donald Trump pardons you to where you can't be prosecuted for the laws that you're announcing you're breaking, you can still be disbarred for them. Trump can't save you from that, and then your whole life and career is ruined forever. And this is the most predictable thing that has ever happened within this administration, because if you look at every single other lawyer Donald Trump has ever had, which one of them is living their best life right now?
The proposal put forward by Maxwell's legal team was notable for its clarity. According to her attorney, Maxwell would be willing to provide extensive testimony if she were granted clemency. The offer was framed as a straightforward exchange, legal relief in return for cooperation and information, that immediately raised questions about the value of the information she may possess, and about how strategically that information is being used. To some observers, the proposal suggested that Maxwell understands precisely how much attention and leverage her knowledge still commands. Whether that knowledge is as significant as many believe remains an open question. It is possible that the mystery surrounding what she might know has become almost as influential as the information itself. For years, public speculation has been fueled not only by what has been revealed, but also by what remains undisclosed. Survivors and their advocates have frequently expressed skepticism about Maxwell's role in any future disclosures. One attorney representing Epstein survivors argued that Maxwell's credibility has been so deeply damaged that any statement she makes would face immediate scrutiny and challenge. The issue, in that view, is not whether she possesses information. It is whether the public, investigators, or the courts would consider her a reliable source. At the same time, the broader conversation has become increasingly vulnerable to misinformation. Various social media posts and viral videos have attempted to link numerous celebrities to the Epstein case, often without credible evidence. Fact-checking organizations have repeatedly investigated several of the most widely circulated claims and found many of them to be unsupported or false. This highlights a recurring pattern in online discourse. When a major scandal dominates public attention, familiar celebrity names are often attached to the story regardless of whether a meaningful connection exists. The result is a cycle in which speculation spreads rapidly while verified information struggles to keep pace. Public figures who have already faced controversy or criticism are especially susceptible to becoming the subjects of these narratives. Existing public skepticism can make unverified claims seem more believable, even when supporting evidence is absent. In the attention-driven economy of social media, outrage often travels farther than nuance. Combining a well-known public figure with one of the most notorious criminal scandals in recent history is a formula that can generate enormous engagement, regardless of whether the underlying claim is true. That dynamic has become one of the defining challenges of understanding the Epstein story today, separating documented facts from speculation, and evidence from viral rumor.
So the internet, guys, has truly lost it because rumors, stories have flooded the internet and gone viral that Ellen DeGeneres is a cannibal who is all up in the Epstein files, and that this is what she does in her spare time, whether it's in the UK Cotswold when she was here or over in America. It's gone viral, it's all over the internet, and it's just so interesting to me. Epstein files reveal that Ellen DeGeneres is the biggest cannibal in Hollywood. She preferred to eat, the flesh of a child because it was more tender. She's one of the most famous American people in entertainment. Now you've got, messages like this, tweets like this going viral, but in actual fact, guys, if you do research, she's not in the Epstein files. She's not mentioned anywhere in the Epstein files. No emails between her and her twin Epstein. No emails between her or Ghislaine. No emails between anybody else. Now, the reason why I say twin is because she looks like Ghislaine. She looks like Epstein. They all look alike. But there's nothing of substance that proves or aids or abets the narrative that this woman is somebody who is a cannibal in the Epstein files, because she's not in the Epstein files. I'll give you something else, an example which has gone completely viral. You've got some man called TPV Sean who has done a very extensive video, nearly 3 million views, that apparently Ellen actually ate Anna Heche after, unaliving her. Ellen, the disgraced daytime TV queen, has been unmasked as a living bridge between Epstein's elite network and Hollywood. How would that be the case? How can she be described as a bridge between different entities when she's not even in the files? I feel like people need to ground themselves when we are discussing people, because we get insane rumors like this. There was a video, for example, of a woman who was in Quebec, Canada, and it looked like it was Ghislaine. Now this went viral, even I believed it for a while, because it genuinely looked like her, basically with the facelift, only for that person who uploaded that video admitting that everything was AI. He admitted that he created the video, he admitted that the video was AI, and he admitted that he wanted to do it to basically kind of, shock factor, get some engagement, farming, and to me it's frustrating. So we have to use our discernment when it comes to what is happening online. I'm not saying that Ellen is out of the woods. If you know my content, you know that I don't like Ellen, and I think that she's a very shady individual, but she definitely isn't out of the woods, because if you want to talk about the Wayfair scandal, then we can talk about something, that is of substance, that is confusing or depth, or we have something to go with here. But when you are talking about how she's some kind of cannibal and there's no conversation to prove so, it definitely becomes alarming. Hey guys, it's Rob Morali. Hope you guys are all doing well today. Daily and consistent content. Let's get straight into this video. Now, I'm not disputing the fact that she could be one. I'm not disputing the fact that, that all of this is believable to me, but it only becomes so believable because of the Wayfair stuff. It doesn't mean that we can just outright post lies about how she's heavily connected to Ghislaine, heavily connected to Epstein, when there actually is no proof of this, because then we're losing, what is the point of me sitting here reporting anything to you if people can make up lies and, I could just run with a lie? Like, what is the point? What is the point? It makes no sense. It's believable to me because if we look at the Wayfair scandal, she even had her own, collection, which is very bizarre to me. Then you had multiple other people basically sending off stuff with missing names of kids. And then on top of that, in the Epstein files, you have Woody Allen's assistants and Epstein's assistants basically purchasing stuff from Wayfair. That is a direct connect. That is what we can, jump off on and basically build a theory based on what we've seen in the files, which is what I've done a video on a couple of weeks ago. That makes sense. Now, if there was an email or some files or connect between Epstein and Ellen in regards to cannibalism, then that is a direct connect which does not exist, which I think is unfair on her. And the reason why I say this is because you've got multiple look guys, one specific tweet: the Epstein files expose Ellen as Hollywood's most prolific cannibal. This has got 12 million views, right? There's no proof of this. There's no evidence that she engaged in this in the files. There's nothing. I've looked through the files, I've done my research, I've looked through the trove of them. Everything that could mention Ellen's name has nothing to do with cannibalism or anything in the files relating. It's just, random articles with her name in it. That's it.
Why are so many people willing to believe almost any claim connected to this story without demanding evidence? That is not simply a question of media literacy. It reflects something deeper. A widespread erosion of trust in institutions, when official agencies spend years releasing information slowly, issuing heavily redacted documents, and leaving major questions unanswered, a vacuum is created. Into that vacuum step people who are willing to offer certainty where facts remain incomplete. And audiences who feel misled or frustrated can become more receptive to the loudest voices, regardless of whether those voices are accurate. Lost amid the political battles, celebrity headlines, legal maneuvering, and endless social media speculation is the group most directly affected by all of this. The survivors. These are the people who lived through the system that Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell helped create. For them, this has never been about intrigue, gossip, or entertainment. It has always been about accountability. Throughout this process, many survivors and their advocates have continued to speak out. Some have criticized the handling of document releases, arguing that delays, redactions, and the overwhelming volume of records released at once have made it more difficult, not easier, for the public to understand what happened. Questions also remain about the broader network of individuals who may have been connected to Epstein's activities. Various investigative summaries and law enforcement reviews have acknowledged allegations involving multiple people, while also noting that available evidence did not always support criminal charges. As a result, many questions remain unresolved in the public record. What survivors have consistently asked for is remarkably simple: transparency, context, and accountability. They want complete answers, not another cycle of headlines followed by silence. From that perspective, Maxwell's congressional appearance felt less like a breakthrough and more like another chapter in a long series of disappointments. Months of anticipation produced very few answers, while many of the same questions remained unanswered. And that is what makes this moment so unusual. Millions of pages of documents have been released. A woman who may possess significant knowledge about one of the most notorious criminal networks in recent memory remains largely silent. Prominent names continue to appear in records that are still being analyzed. Meanwhile, social media platforms are flooded with claims ranging from plausible to completely fabricated, yet through all the noise, the clearest voices remain those of the people who are still waiting for justice. The story is not over. It is not over because important questions remain unresolved. It is not over because investigators, journalists, and researchers are still working through an enormous volume of records. And it is not over because survivors continue to seek answers they have been requesting for years. Perhaps the central question is no longer about any single celebrity, politician, or public figure whose name appears in a file. The larger question is why so many questions have remained unanswered for so long, and whether meaningful accountability can still emerge from a story that continues to unfold years after the crimes themselves came to light. What do you think? Share your perspective in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want more deep dive investigations and analysis, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching.